ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Star Wars for 100 Days, the ultimate fan countdown leading up to the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens. Speaking of which, we are a mere 52 days away from the release of the 7th chapter in the Star Wars saga. However, today is also the end of another big event. The end of my Clone War reviews. I really didn't want it to end here, but the original Clone War series from 2003 is only 25 episodes long, and most of those episodes are only about 3 minutes each, so we were going to get through this pretty quick. What is really great is that the final episode of Clone Wars is pretty freaking spectacular. Not only for its action scenes and the story that's actually evolving the character of Anakin Skywalker, but for the mere fact that this chapter actually directly ties into Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. As soon as this episode ends, the movie begins. So watching them back to back is really awesome. Another thing that I really love about this episode is we also get to see the formal introduction of General Grievous's greatest weapons, his 2 extra arms, which allow him to wield 4 lightsabers at once. Throughout the entire Clone Wars series, whenever he wanted to wield more than one lightsaber, he would actually use his feet, and that's because in many ways, he was trying to be really unorthodox and also trying to challenge himself. However, since this was getting close to the reveal of the movie, they decided they were going to show that he would actually have 4 separate arms, which could control 4 separate weapons. And throughout the course of this entire chapter, I just kept telling myself, when is he going to kill the Jedi? When is he going to kill the Jedi? He's going to do it in a really flashy way, I know it, and it's all a build-up to the final scene where he's about to capture Chancellor Palpatine, and he ends up taking out that big fuzzy Jedi and the Ithorian, the one snail Jedi, when he reveals his extra pair of arms, which go for his lightsabers and finish them off in a flash of green and blue. It's really freaking awesome. What I also really love about this is that you have the character of Shaak Ti, who's battling against his Magna Guards, and what's really cool about her is that she's also doing a little bit of dual wielding. She's actually using her lightsaber and one of the Magna Guard's electric stabs, and her fighting choreography against these guys looks really intense. Unfortunately, she does not have an opportunity to save her friends, and Chancellor Palpatine has been captured by the droid army. What I really love, though, is the very small detail at the very end of this episode. As General Grievous is getting ready to make his way into his ship, he's suddenly confronted by Mace Windu. He then decides to bring out all of his lightsabers at once, because he knows that Mace Windu is an opponent that he should not mess with. However, Mace Windu can dish out the pain with his lightsabers, his fist, and with the power of the Force, and that's exactly what he does against General Grievous. He uses the power of the Force to actually crush his robotic chest, which causes him to start coughing profusely. This is exactly why General Grievous has this weird sniffling coughing problem in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Of course, this was eventually retconned later on when they introduced Star Wars The Clone Wars, the CGI animated series, and unfortunately Clone Wars is now a part of the legacy portion of the Star Wars universe, meaning that it's no longer canon. Despite that, I still tell myself that this is exactly how General Grievous actually has his coughing problems. All because of General Grievous. It also explains why he's not exactly the greatest fighter in the movies at all. I mean, he does fight against Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan is one of the greatest Jedi of all time, but it's just hard to believe that after seeing him in the Clone Wars, he would be defeated so easily. That being said, this entire episode is a great way to get yourself excited for Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Not only because of the Battle of Coruscant, but because of Anakin Skywalker as well. Because in this episode, he actually does end up saving all of the Nelvan warriors from the Techno Union by basically ripping off their cybernetic enhancements and bringing them back to their own semblance of self. But he does it in such a ridiculous, violent fashion where he destroys everything, his robot arm actually ends up exploding and he loses it, but when he encounters the Techno Union, he chokes them and kills them right there by breaking their neck and just crushing their entire trachea. It's a really freaky scene, and the fact that it takes place in an animated series is really shocking to say the least. Despite that, he still managed to bring peace to this village, which looks like they're going to be just fine. However, they're always going to remember Anakin Skywalker for being their savior, and in a way, they're sort of worshipping a future Sith Lord. The episode ends with Anakin fixing his arm and getting ready to go off into the Battle of Coruscant. In fact, the final shot of the episode is a massive space battle, which takes place at the very beginning of Revenge of the Sith. Words simply cannot do this series justice. It's an amazing companion piece to the Star Wars universe, which expands on a lot of the side characters, the Jedis, the clone troopers, and even the villains of the series. And it also just happens to be beautifully animated by Genndy Tartakovsky and his team, a man who I really do believe is one of the greatest American animators in the world, and has been influenced by a lot of the greats, and you can really see that in his work, while at the same time, he still has his very own distinct style that when you see it, you immediately know that's Genndy Tartakovsky's work. I really wish that when they decided to reboot Star Wars The Clone Wars, that they would have gone with this more hand-drawn looking route. However, we're at a point in history where a lot of those cartoons just really aren't as popular as they used to be, and in many ways, considering how CG-heavy the prequel movies were, it's actually kind of fitting that Star Wars The Clone Wars, the 2008 series, actually was done with that style of animation. And to be fair, the show is really good. It just took a while to sort of get into its own. I would say that the first 2 seasons are very passable, but still enjoyable, but it wasn't until the 3rd season of Star Wars The Clone Wars where things really started to go crazy. The good thing is, the 2003 version of Star Wars Clone Wars stands on its own with every single episode. They're not all connected, and most of them tell their own separate story, but they do so strictly with the use of animation and not without any ridiculous storylines going on. You're absorbed in nearly every single episode, and just like the actual Star Wars films themselves, you can rewatch these and notice something different every single time that you see it. The lightsaber battles, the funny dialogue, the crazy alien designs, everything just works in Star Wars Clone Wars, and is without a doubt my favorite thing to come from the prequel trilogies. This is something that any Star Wars fan should definitely see, but if you are a hardcore fan, chances are you've seen it already. However, if you're an animation enthusiast and you just love beautiful action animation sequences, check out this show. Even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you're probably going to see something you like, and you're at least going to say, hey, that was pretty freaking cool. The series did a fantastic job of getting people excited for Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I know I was incredibly pumped up, and it also introduced the world to General Grievous, who I honestly think is one of the greatest Star Wars villains of the entire series. Despite the fact that he is kind of derpy in Star Wars The Clone Wars and in, of course, Revenge of the Sith, I still think he's got an incredible character design and a really cool gimmick with the fact that he can move his body around in a really fluid fashion and use up to 4, maybe even 6 lightsabers at once, depending on how pissed off he is. This series right here was a fantastic journey, and really, I think, the best example of what the Clone Wars are really all about. However, I am going to talk in length a little bit more about the 2008 version of the show. However, that is a discussion for another day. What I will say is, going forward with Star Wars for 100 Days, we're going to get back on track a little bit with just some more standard discussion videos, but fans of bounty hunters should get excited, because for the next week and a half to 2 weeks, they're going to be dominating this discussion video series. That's right, and it's all going to be leading up to Boba Fett. But before you guys leave today, I would love to hear your thoughts about the final episode of Star Wars Clone Wars, what you thought about the entire series in general, and of course I would love to hear what you guys would like to see from the brand new movie Star Wars The Force Awakens. Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.